So brand new project, we had a 1955 Chevy. This is a 210 Bel Air. I'm not really good at identifying these old school cars like this. Maybe you guys can come in. I think it's Bel Air. Been told it's 210, but we have a lot to do on this car. Right now, it's got a really bad exhaust leak, but it did get inspected, which was amazing because it got inspected with a broken exhaust manifold on it and almost no exhaust. Somebody took a Sawzall to it and cut it off, but it sounds cool. We need to pull the exhaust manifolds off. Now, there's a little bit of controversy that I found online when trying to do research for this thing. Do you put headers on it? Do you put long tube shorties? Do you buy a whole kit? What I decided to go with was a ram's horn style exhaust manifold. There were some kits available after that, but we're gonna keep this pretty much stock. This is a stock 4.3 liter or 263 cubic inch V8. Now I was told this actual engine was out of a 56, not a 55, so it's not a numbers matching original, but it is the stock era engine and everything on it is bone stock. It still has points under the distributor, still has the factory exhaust manifolds, which they're actually kind of rare to find this particular style of exhaust manifold. I couldn't find them online and only found one listing on eBay for them. So we're gonna go with the ram's horn, we're gonna put collectors on it, we're gonna take it to a local exhaust shop, have them do all the bending and tubes and weld everything. Not sure exactly what kind of muffler we're gonna put on it right now, maybe Flowmaster, glass pack or something like that. We're also gonna be putting AC on this 55 and having somebody do the entire interior. Now, if you can see, the outside has been done. The paint and body is immaculate, looks freaking amazing. We drove around this car. We'll show you a little bit of footage right now, driving around downtown Fort Worth. Everybody loves this car. This car, we passed by a brand new Corvette Stingray, around $130,000 Corvette Stingray. Not a single person was looking at the Stingray. Everybody was looking at this one. I was sitting in the passenger seat. My cousin, he was sitting in the driver's seat. And my son was in the back having a good time, and just every single eye was on this car. The old guys were giving us thumbs up, the young guys were giving us thumbs up. Even the teenage girls were pulling their phones out and like filming this freaking car. This is an iconic car for everybody. Like, I really, really want to own one of these one day. But for now, I'm just gonna work on it. So today we're gonna pull the exhaust manifolds off. I'm gonna show you a trick to getting old, rusty exhaust manifold bolts off. There's a trick to it. Everybody gets really, really nervous when you're gonna break the bolts, and it might break the bolts, but if you just spend a little time, a little technique, you can actually pull them off usually just fine without snapping them. So I'm gonna show you the little break in the exhaust manifold and why we're replacing it, and then I'll show you a couple of techniques that I use right off the bat to help facilitate this whole thing. So the right side, which would be the passenger side of the exhaust, you see this little crack right here. Now it's cracked because I think the nut's missing and that put this whole thing in kind of a bind. We could grind this off and braze it and it's an excellent candidate for it, but we went down to Summit Racing. They had the replacement exhaust manifolds, the ram horn style. We're gonna get those out, but before we even start on that, I wanna go ahead and spray these down with the penetrating lube. I really like Knocker Loose. Use whatever the hell you like to use. This stuff works really good. So spray down every single surface. Spray down the bolt head, spray down the little mating surface to where the exhaust manifold meets the head. Now it might not creep down in there, but I mean, we're already here, just spray it down. Spray everything down, let it soak. Then we'll get the boxes. We'll make sure the parts are correct when we pull them off. And then we'll come back and I'll spray it again. And we'll start the process and I'll teach you a couple of tips for how to get these off without breaking. The hardest one's gonna be that guy right there to get to. Now, if you guys wanna make your own, I think this stuff works just as good because I've used both of them. But a homemade solution that works excellent is half ATF, there's automatic transmission fluid, and half acetone. Just mix them up in a squirt bottle. Now finding a chemical proof squirt bottle has been pretty hard. Zep seems to make a pretty good bottle, but the acetone will tear them up. So get like a soap bottle, something with a like Dawn dish soap where it has a little pop top. Fill that up with it and then just douse everything that you possibly can with it, and that seems to be one of the best penetrating lubes out there. I don't like keeping a bottle of acetone on my truck because it just seems to leak all over the place and eat everything, but Knocker Loose will do pretty good. If you guys want a can, there'll be a link down in the description, Amazon affiliate link, so I get a little bit of residual off the sale, and truth be told, these guys send me this stuff. I don't pay for it, so it is a little vested interest into it, but I contacted these guys and told them years ago, hey, send me your stuff, because I always like using CRC stuff, so use whatever you want. Got maybe a little. So on this side, we have the original generator in the way. Don't know if I can really manage to spray everything. All right. We're gonna have to take the generator off to get to it, but that's not a big deal. Now the only bad part about a spray can is they don't really work upside down very well. Oh, I guess it does. Look at that. Whee! I didn't realize that can would work upside down. So this manifold we have is a Dorman manifold, and we decided to go with Dorman because they were the only one locally available, and they actually have the provision for not only the generator on one side, but the AC compressor on the other. And what we're talking about, if I can figure out how to open the bag, this little provision right here. This is going to be the driver's side. That bracket for the generator bolts to this side, and it's got a factory appearance to it. Now, we're not going to worry about painting it. We're not going to worry about having it powder coated or anything. They didn't do that from the factory anyway. And if this is a show car, then yeah, we'd send it off and have it ceramic coated or something cool. But for now, this is going to be our replacement. And we'll do some bolts. Now, the one thing I am kind of concerned about is I went off of internet forums about which manifold was going to fit this engine. This is technically for a 327 Corvette. I don't think Chevy changed the exhaust manifold pattern, bolt pattern very much from the 50s to 60s from what I read, but we won't be able to find out until we get the exhaust manifold off, and if it's the wrong part, it's the wrong part, and we'll have to deal with it. Now, the side that we're actually causing us to do this whole thing is this one, the passenger side. And we decided to go with that same exact style. No, we didn't. Oh, I remember, okay. So when we were at Summit, we were trying to get the passenger side with the provision with the AC, for an AC bracket, accessory that we could mount it to, and we couldn't find any. They didn't have one in stock, and we wanted to get this job done today. So that's our passenger side manifold, and it's actually, it feels, you can tell the flange is a lot thicker, so hopefully we won't have the issue that we have in the other one. It's also a 3-bolt flange instead of a 2-bolt flange, so it'll share the load a little bit. And then we got these collectors. I just live in Fort Worth, so every time we need a part, we just go to Summit Racing over in Arlington, which is about 20 miles away. Not a problem. And usually they have everything in stock. And man, the guy that worked there was freaking awesome. He knew all about these cars. With a wealth of information. That sucks. So we'll have to return those. Now, when we were there, I asked the guy, I was like, are these collectors gonna fit this manifold? And he was like, well, yeah, they should. So I believed him, and I don't know why I believe parts guys, because I've been left high and dry many times. I should have taken this apart while we're at Summit and then put them out here and realized, nope, that's not the right one, and then went back. So that's my fault, but we can still pull the old manifolds off. We need to match the old manifolds up to this one to make sure that it's the actually right one. Anyway, so, wow, these are different sizes. Y'all notice that? Check that out. So one side is correct, one side's not. I bet you anything that fits just fine. Yep. Crazy. So the passenger side manifold has a different flange on it, which is going to put us in a bind. That seems to be the incorrect gasket for this. That's not right. So I think that, yeah, that one came for that one. That's gonna be the one we need for this side. I don't know if that's a part number that we can get locally or not, but apparently we're gonna have to go back to Summit at some point anyway, which is, when you're working on old stuff, that's just what happens. what I'll do, I'll go back to Summit and I'll just throw this manifold at the guy that told us that it'd work. That seems to be the best option. So we got one good manifold, the other one is not. I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling the other manifold off and get it matched up to see if our flanges are the same. We got some other projects we wanna do on a car. We're gonna go ahead and get everything we can possibly do done in a list of parts, so that way we're not making trips all day long. So something I learned about being a field mechanic since 2009 is you accomplish every single aspect of the job that you can possibly accomplish while you're on the job. Because let's say you, oh shoot, I don't have that little 9/16 bolt that I need. And you run to the hardware store, get the 9/16 bolt, you come back and oh shoot, I need a wash, oh shoot, I need, you know, I forgot coolant. And then you're running all day long and you're accumulating hours and you're wasting time. So force yourself to get to a stopping point where you cannot accomplish anything else and then worry about the parts. So the rear exhaust runner and the front exhaust runner have these little tabs on here that are supposed to keep these bolts from backing off. So we can get those out of the way at the... All right, so if you guys, sorry about my mirror, it's cracked, but you could tell that nobody ever actually folded that little tab over. I don't think those little fold over tabs actually work very well at all anyway, so we're not worried about it. That guy is done. This one over here doesn't even have one, neither does that one. And the guy in the very back there, doesn't look like anybody bent that tab over, because usually that's the hardest one to get to back there, and it just gets neglected every single time. Tip for exhaust manifold bolts. We have we got 6 bolts. The exhaust, actually, I can use this other manifold as a demonstration. So pretend this thing is bolted to the engine, right? You got 6 bolts here. What most people will do, especially on like, and this is any exhaust manifold, doesn't matter, any long piece of metal, but this is specifically important on exhaust manifolds. If you take this bolt out, you've loosened this area here, and then you take this one out, and now this entire section of the exhaust manifold is gonna lift up off the head, and you can see it when it's on a car. It'll separate a little bit. Then you take this one off and this one off, and all of a sudden, when they machined this, it was completely flat, but now it's put this entire thing in a bind because these two are still tight. So by the time you get to this one, you're fighting this lever of this entire massive metal pinched right here. And if you get this one out, then this last one is gonna be the absolute bear of bad news for you, and it's gonna give you hell. So what you need to do, it doesn't matter where you start, but start on one of them, get this one loose where you can back it out, and then tighten it back down, just as, you know, like you would if you were gonna leave it, you're gonna reinstall it. Do the same thing with this and loosen it up, tighten it back down, loosen it up, tighten it back down, and just go through all of these, loosen them up one at a time, and then come back through, and you can just use your ratchet at that point, loosen them up, and it'll come off. I really wish I would have known that when I was younger, because I broke off plenty of these and had to take off cylinder heads before. All right, so we're gonna bend this fuel line out of the way a little bit so we don't heat it up too much. Next tip is to heat it up with a torch. Now, I'm not heating the bolts up. I'm trying to heat the area around it, just this cast iron area. I'm not even gonna put a wrench on these to see if they're loose. I wanna go ahead and just... Now, when you use a socket, this isn't even a really good brand. This is just an Icon brand socket. It doesn't matter. But make sure that you use a 6-point socket, not a 12-point socket, because they round the bolts off a little less. Use a good ratchet. Make sure your socket is all the way on the bolt as much as you can get it. Okay? And then very, very gently move it off. I'm saying it's not even a problem. Like, I don't think we're gonna have a problem in any of these. But I still don't want it to pinch in the back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this off a little bit. I'm gonna spray some lube in there. And I'm gonna tighten it back down. And now before I pull all these off, I need to do something with this flange on the bottom, this exhaust pipe, because if I pull all these off, then I'm gonna be fighting this exhaust down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue doing this process with all of these bolts. Once they've all been loosened and tightened, then I'm gonna work on this one down here. Okay. All right, so that one's pretty tight. Got it to move just a fraction of an inch. I'm gonna change my direction on my socket wrench, try to go the other way, and just work it back and forth. All right, so this bolt right here is being kind of a pain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this spark plug wire off. Set that guy down there, get that one out of the way. I'm gonna grab my torch and I'm gonna stick it down here and try to heat this area up and then try it again. So I guarantee what we're fighting is we're not even fighting the threads into the head, we're fighting the section that the bolt goes through this cast iron manifold. It's gotten water in there and it's actually rusted to each other. So I'm putting my hand on my ratchet right here to make sure that my socket is centered. And I don't put too much side to side leverage on it because I don't want to strip the bolt. All right, so I loosened it a little bit. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna tighten it back up. Loosen it. I'm gonna spray some lube in there. Try to work it back and forth. Now for this bolt, I'm gonna take it all the way out, spray the bolt down, get rid of some of the rust on the outside of it. Ooh. You can see how rusty that is. So I wanna pull that out for two reasons. One, you can tell the threads in the head were fine. Our problem is right there, right where all that rust built up. So I'm gonna take a wire brush, I'm gonna clean it up. I'm gonna spray it with lube for two reasons. One, I wanna lube the threads for when it goes back in so it doesn't gall or there's something crazy doesn't happen. But I'm also wanting to cool the bolt down, which is gonna shrink the bolt just a little bit and then help us when we try to pull it back out when we get all the other bolts loose. Now if you guys look real close, this side of the threads, all the threads come to a point, and the shiny side, they're actually flattened out a little bit. So when we get the exhaust manifolds off, I'm gonna run a tap through all these holes, and hopefully that'll clean up any kind of inconsistencies in the factory threads, and it'll help us get the brand new bolts in. And you can use anti-seize, but since this is a temporary deal and we're just gonna put it back in and immediately pull it out, I think knocker loose or any kind of penetrating lube or just even engine oil is gonna work better. Because as soon as you get a bottle of anti-seize out, you just put one little piece of anti-seize on anything and now you're covered in the crap. Another tip when you're doing this is do this stuff by hand. You saw me use the ratchet. That was just to get it, or the cordless ratchet. I only did that to get it, try to get it in there quickly, but there's some, I can feel it going in. It's kind of tough going in. So we got the car in the air. It's gonna be a little easier to get to that collector, or what are you going to call that flange on the bottom of the exhaust manifold on this side. While we have it up, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the other side too to get it out. And I need to try to get this exhaust pipe off. Now I don't know if we're gonna be able to get this pipe off without cutting it. I think we're gonna have to end up cutting it, but maybe not. As you can tell, the exhaust is already missing from the rest of the car. And like I told you guys, this is a factory car. It has not been resto modded. It hasn't been gone through. We're gonna rebuild the entire front suspension. You can tell your little drag link over here. The bushings seen better days. Most of the bushings are all original, and I don't think any of this has ever been replaced. So this seems to be a garage queen for most of its life. Not a whole lot of miles on it, but a lot of time. So I did disconnect the battery because I'm messing around next to the starter. Put that guy up there and see if I can get on it good enough to get it to crack loose. Now this one, I don't care if we snap it off, because if we snap it off, then so be it. The problem with using extensions that are this long is that they flex really bad, especially under high torque. This is a 3/8. If we used a 1/2 inch, we get a little less of that, but I said we just. Well, that'll work. Like I said, I wasn't concerned about snapping it off because once it's snapped off, it's just a flange. We got to take it off anyway. So now we'll come over to this side, get this flange loose over here, and then hopefully that whole pop comes out. So this guy, we have a little more access to this side, so I could probably use a 1/2 inch on here. I need to. That one came off. And sometimes it's really hard to get the the nut back off. If you guys can tell, it's wedged in that socket. Like I said, it's a cheap socket. It's an Icon, which is a, not Pittsburgh tool, what do they call it? Harbor Freight. And contrary to popular belief, it is not a snap-on socket. Icon is not snap-on. They just copied their crap to look like snap-on. It is a snap-on ratchet though. And I always get flack for this ratchet every time I use it. People in the comments would complain about, I can't believe you're using that style, whatever. Used this style for 18 years, and it's been perfectly fine for me. You jokers that don't know how to use it, just go complain to your moms. I don't know what somebody did to this exhaust, but it is cut completely right here and tack welded together, and cut completely here and not even really welded together. It's got plenty of holes in it, so I guess somebody was doing their best impression of a Mexican exhaust shop, maybe. All right, cool. So I'm gonna spray these flanges down. Those studs are rusted on there, so hopefully we don't have to do a lot of hammering to get them off. But a little lube goes a long way, at least according to that preacher's daughter. So all I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna try to hammer on this exhaust right here, because that's gonna transfer up there, and hopefully that'll loosen that flange up there. There we go. Now, will it come out without cutting it? Oh, that's hot. Check that out. Now, the most impressive part of this is, like I said, somebody cut this and they didn't even bother to weld it on the top. Like, at all. But the car sounded good. We had plenty of comments when we drove it around town. They're like, "Oh, it sounds amazing!" And me and my cousin, he's the one that owns this car. Yeah, we both knew better. But by the way, guys, if you're interested in this car, this isn't a personal project. This isn't a personal project for my cousin. This is a work in progress. We're going to do some updates to it just to get it to where you can drive it down the road, have nice AC system, that kind of stuff. So stay tuned to the channel, and we'll definitely be up for sale. If you guys are interested in buying it before then, send me an email, put your name down in the comments. I'll read the comments, and let me know what your offers are on it, because we're always entertaining offers. Completely, like, you see everything completely factory. There are some things we need to fix, and our goal is to get everything fixed. Like, we'll probably, I don't know if this is a rear main seal or just an oil pan. We'll probably get that fixed, or we will get that fixed. Looks like that oil leak is coming from way up there though. Maybe a valve cover gasket. Want to go ahead and make sure the valves are adjusted, and pretty much go through everything in the car to make it a Completely factory, but updated to the point where when you get in, you start it up, it just starts every time. You don't have to worry about messing with points or anything like that. All right, 2 more bolts left, and then we'll pull that manifold off. So something they used to do back then on their exhaust manifolds is they would have this little thermostatic flap, right? This thing would close when it's cold and open when it's hot, and it always ended up getting stuck, constantly. And it looks like they only put it on one side, but that, lo and behold, that's what the part that was broke. This thing wasn't working at all. We're not gonna go back with it, but now we need to figure out, is this the right manifold? It looks like a match to me. So this side is the correct manifold. We can go ahead and mount it to the car. This side is, again, still the wrong manifold. We need to go ahead and get that thing swapped out because we don't want to. We could just get a collector and put it on here, but then our collector on this side would be different than this side. It's going to make the exhaust system routing a little difficult. Whatever size pipe they use at the exhaust shop, it's probably gonna be 2 1/4, 2 1/2. We want that continuity running all the way down the car. So you don't wanna start with 2 1/2 on one side, 3" on one side, 2 1/4 on the other side, and then have to marry them all together, especially up by the exhaust manifold. I don't know if scavenging is really gonna affect this kind of Y pipe setup on this, but there is a scavenging effect on V8s or any kind of E-series motor. If you don't know what scavenging is, look up exhaust scavenging on YouTube. There's a lot more clever people than me that can explain it. I got animations and all kinds of crazy stuff. But we can go ahead and mount this. Now before we mount this, I'm gonna take my tap, I'm gonna run it through all the holes just to clean all the holes out, get the surfaces cleaned up with a wire brush, and then put the manifold on, and then go from there. We're also gonna go ahead and mount this guy here, because it's gonna be easier to put it on right now than it is once the manifold is on the car.